Hi, Coach Miller here from BTB Lax. We're talking about some lacrosse terms. I know a lot of you younger players, coaches, maybe even experienced players are a little unclear with some of those lacrosse terms out there, so we just wanted to clear it up for you and go over a few things that we find confuse certain players. The rollback is probably one of my favorite terms. I talk about it all the time when I'm coaching the guys I coach, either youth or in high school. It's a great term that was instilled in me, especially when I was playing my college lacrosse at Tufts from my defensive coaches there. So the rollback is basically, we can use it for an offensive or a defensive player, but I was a defensive player and I use it all the time. So basically all it is if you're a defensive player and say you have the ball and you're coming up the field and then you have some pressure coming in from an attackman, well, this guy's going to roll back to change his planes, to change the way he's going, to kind of create space and then see a new path or vision for him out there. So you'll see a lot of times defensive players just try to barrel through this guy, this attackman, this riding attackman, and he'll more often than not either get the ball, lose the ball, or whatnot because he's not utilizing this rollback. So along those same tokens, if you're an offensive player, say an offensive player's up here, he's a midi, he's got the ball, he's coming down here, and then there's a little bit of congestion going on with whatever, say there's other players down there or whatnot. Oftentimes you should just roll back and then create this new path or vision for him to see what's going on the other side of the field. So a rollback is just basically changing around from where you were going, rolling back. A lot of times you want to roll to the outside, so that means not taking the stick across your face so that it potentially would get checked out so that you can redivert or redirect where the ball is going. So that's the rollback. I highly encourage you work on those, whether you're a defenseman or an offensive player, working on the rollback because it's very, very useful. Moving on, diagonal. So this I want to talk about in terms of defensemen, especially when they're clearing the ball. So I'm just going to throw my players up here. Got our goalie, our two defensemen, and I'll throw our defenseman up here for now. So say this defenseman has the ball. The diagonal pass, and keep in mind, I think this is actually one of the hardest passes you need to learn how to throw if you're a defenseman, is the diagonal pass, especially if it's a diagonal pass with your weak hand, not your strong hand. At BTB Lax, we call it your offhand because we, through drilling and stuff, don't really want to call it a weak hand. And hopefully if you drill it enough, it will be an offhand and not a weak hand. But either way, if you're throwing with your non-strong hand across the field, what this pass is the diagonal. So it's a longer pass. Diagonally across the field. So you'll use this when clearing the ball because oftentimes, like based on how teams ride, this is the particular guy who would be open. So just to have a little fun here, say the ball did get redirected here to this defenseman, then this defenseman possibly could look for the diagonal to that midi. And then once the midi catches the ball, you can go play offense. So that diagonal pass is a key pass for a defenseman to be able to make. So I highly encourage you start practicing those longer diagonal passes. Check is the next term. So check is a real simple term for defenseman again, and that's basically just a poke check to his offensive player's hands and his stick. Simple poke check. I know that I coached in college for a while with Coach Rienzo, who's also a BTB Lax coach, and he was a big advocate of the poke check. He would always tell his players to poke check, poke check, poke check. We're never looking for a home run check or anything like that to take the ball away. So the simple fundamental poke check oftentimes is what coaches mean when they talk about the term check. Moving on, who's hot, fire, one, they're all synonymous. And what that means is basically, go back to our diagram board over here. It's the slide guy. It's the guy who's going to slide first when a certain defensive player is beat. So if we just have a midi up here being guarded by another midi, this midi has the ball. And then in here, I don't know what kind of set they're in, but just say there's a defenseman in there guarding this crease attackman, okay? So in this case, this midi's an aggressive guy. He's dodging to go to the cage. All defensive like to be organized and have, you know, their terminology for who's responsible for sliding when this guy potentially gets beat. So that would be who's hot, fire, 1. So this guy, so say this particular attackman or midfielder did beat him, then this defenseman would be coming and sliding. So now he'd be responsible for guarding that midi. And then based on what type of defensive schemes you have going on, this particular attackman will get guarded by somebody else. So there'll be a rotational aspects after the hot guy slid. So that's what we're talking about when we're saying who's hot, who's the first slide. Flash. So we talked about some defensive terms before. Flash is basically more used for offensive players, and it's basically just popping to the ball. So a lot of times a player may have it and somebody will be like, flash. This is especially used with coaches. You'll hear this used for different coaches, is they just want an offensive player to flash the ball, to show the guy that he's open, to maybe get a quick pass or some sort of movement with the ball. So that's what we're talking about when flash. It's a quick movement to the ball. And lastly is get it in or squeeze it. So this term is pretty useful because it gets a little complicated in that they change the rules from year to year. They're always evaluating it, so you never really, I'm coaching all the time, and I always have to make sure I read the rule book each season to get a good sense of what's going on. But this past season, if a team were to gain possession, they basically have 30 seconds to get it into the attack area, which is, this is the attack area once you cross the restraining line. So when they say get it in, what referees usually do is they have this little timer on their belt, and as soon as a team picks the ball up, they hit the timer. That takes 20 seconds for the timer to go off, and then you have a 10 extra seconds, and you'll see the refs go like this, counting down each second. So then you know, if you see the referee going like this, that you have 10 seconds or less to get the ball in the attack area. So if you hear coaches yelling, squeeze it, get it in, whatever, they're basically telling their offensive players to either throw the ball to one of their players in the attack area or run in it. So, because if you don't, you'll lose it and there'll be a turnover. And then the other team will get the ball, and then who knows what will happen. But so that's what we're talking about. We just went over some of these terms. Roll back, my favorite term, diagonal, check, who's hot, flash, and get it in. So some more lacrosse terms for you that are just going to help you clear some of that confusion you may or may not have had. So hopefully it helps, and we'll see you in the next video.
Did you know that there's just 2 simple things that separate the average youth and high school lacrosse player from the elite guys that are ready to go on to play in college and beyond? Yep, just 2 simple things. We teamed up with college All-American and multiple MLL All-Star Mike Kimmel to put together a completely free, 45-minute long, 3-part video training series that's going to show kids and parents exactly what those 2 things are. What you need to be working on if you want to take your game to the next level. And nope, it's got nothing to do with hitting the gym or running till you puke. If you're serious about improving as a player and you want to become one of the best guys on your team, get more playing time, and catch the eye of college recruiters, you have to see this free video training. Just click the link below in the description of this video and you'll be taken to a page where you can ask to receive instant access to these free videos. Join the thousands of high school and youth players that have already seen Mike's awesome training and take control of your game today.